There are appliances now that are proving us wrong. We used to think you couldn't really change the shape of the maxilla or the craniofacial complex much into adulthood, but there's like homeoblock and bioblocks and other appliances that are proving us wrong. There's also other ways to expand using small TAD or screws in the palate that can expand, but all hope is not lost if you're an adult. But obviously we want to catch things earlier because into adulthood, there's a lot of bad habits to unpack. And this is where myofunctional therapy comes in and rebreathing therapy as well. And so we can orthodontically make a lot of changes in adults, but we like to catch things earlier, definitely in kids. So what we suggest parents look for, if you're saying, well, how do I know if my child has an issue? There are research studies out of LA at the Breathe Institute. Dr. Zaghi has created something called the FAirEST 6 score. And there's a couple ways to assess if you think your child has an issue with the way they're breathing. And one is simply, can you or your child breathe through their nose comfortably for 3 minutes straight without feeling very panicked? If you can, then that's great. If you can't, then there might be a structural issue and maybe you need to see an ENT. But then dentally, we're looking for crowding or narrow jaws. And then also if your child, if the only way they can close their lips around their teeth is they have, it's called mentalis strain. So it's dimpling of the chin. It means you're having to overexert these muscles around your lips, the orbicularis oris muscles, and that's showing that there is kind of some sort of imbalance between your jaws. But ideally, you want the tongue to be positioned kind of suctioned up at the palate, and that starts in utero essentially, and your tongue is this huge strong muscle, and so as it sits up at the top of the palate, the face spreads and we grow. The width of our face will expand, but what's happening either from tongue tie or just genetic predispositions, the tongue sits low, and so instead of a broad wide face, we're getting a long dolichofacial, or we call it adenoid facies growth pattern. So we're growing long and thin and not broad and wide. And that is affecting how we breathe. So your tongue does want to be suctioned up to the roof of your mouth. Ideally, the tip of your tongue behind your upper front teeth and kind of suctioned all the way. And the bummer for a lot of adults is their palates are too narrow. So their tongue can't even fit up there. So even with myofunctional therapy, if your house for your tongue isn't big enough, then you're going to have some dysfunction. And so that's where orthodontics comes in. And there is a movement now that really we should be focusing more on changing the structure rather than just going right for surgery, let's say, like a tongue release or adenoids and tonsils out. And this includes with kids. We really need to be starting early interventive orthodontics, and that's part of my practice is that we will refer kids sometimes as young as 2 or 3 years old to get things started. And this isn't for braces, this isn't for the Hollywood smile or straight teeth, this is to change growth patterns.
DoctorsToTrust.com. Please share this video with loved ones.